Hello, I'm Scharaschkin. I'm Director of Research and Regulation at AQA, and I'm responsible for signing off the GCSE and A-level results that we issue each year. I can only do that if they are fair, properly reflect students' levels of attainment, and maintain grading standards year on year. So I wanted to say on behalf of AQA, thank you so much for all the work you've put in over the past weeks to provide us with your centre-assessed grade and rank order information that will play such a vital part in the grading process this year. Teachers have been asked to do an incredibly difficult job, with practically no notice, and often in very challenging personal circumstances. I'm sure many of you will have spent hours agonising over the relative rankings of particular students or combining rankings across teaching groups, not to mention physically entering and checking all the data over the past 2 weeks. But because you've done all that, these young people will now be able to receive grades for their GCSEs, A-levels and other qualifications this summer, despite the unprecedented circumstances we find ourselves in. Our job as an exam board, working closely with the other exam boards, with Ofqual and with the Department for Education, is to ensure that those grades are as fair as possible and that grading standards are consistent across the country and consistent with standards that have applied in the past and will apply in the future. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a bit about how we will use the information that you have supplied to do this and what happens next. Normally, students will be sitting exams now. Of course, we can never know precisely what grade every individual student would have got in every subject had they been able to sit their exams. What we can do, though, is to use the same statistical information that we would use in any normal year to ensure that standards at the national level are maintained year on year. It's really important we do that so that this cohort of students is treated as fairly as possible compared with cohorts in previous years. And then when it comes to awarding grades to each student, we will be guided by your professional judgment as to each student's level of attainment. You know your students, and you are best placed to judge their likely relative performance on the examination. We know from research evidence that teachers' rank orderings of students generally correlate pretty well with examination performance. For that reason, the standardization process that we will use this year will not change the rank orders that you have determined. However, we also know from research that what's harder to do consistently is to judge precise grading standards, for example, the criteria that determine whether a particular student's attainment should be classified as, say, high grade 5 or low grade 6. And of course, this year there's obviously been no opportunity for training and standardization across schools nationally to support those grading judgments. So, in the interests of all students, in fairness to all students, we'll use a standardization process to moderate all the centre-assessed grades you've supplied and ensure that as far as we possibly can, grading standards are consistent across the country. That may mean that, as in any moderation process, some students' final grades may go up or down from their centre-assessed grade. It's also one of the reasons why Ofqual and all the exam boards are asking you please not to disclose centre-assessed grade and rank order information to your students. The standardization process for GCSEs and A-levels will operate in exactly the same way across all exam boards. Essentially, it will consider each school or college's past results and changes in its year-on-year entry profile, using prior attainment data for this year's students and historical information from the Department for Education's National Pupil Database. Looking at changes in entry profiles helps us moderate expectations about grade distributions at the school and college level and ensure consistency of grading standards across the country. As I said earlier, combining this information with national statistical data then also builds in fairness by ensuring that we are treating this year's cohort consistently with any other year's cohort. For other types of qualifications like applied generals and functional skills, the process may have small differences to reflect the different structure of those qualifications, but we'll be using the same principles and similar or relevant evidence to ensure that they are just as fair. There'll be further updates about the grade standardization process as we move towards results day. I appreciate it's something that many of you will want to know more about, and I'm really keen that there's complete transparency about how the process works. Having been involved in design and testing work over the past few weeks, I just wanted to assure you that the approach being taken has been subject to very extensive testing, for example, testing its accuracy on previous year's data, and consultation and technical scrutiny. Given the choice of course, we wouldn't be where we are today. In the circumstances, though, we are absolutely committed to finding a way through that is the best possible and the fairest for this year's students. And I know you all are too. So thank you again very much indeed.